Um, the next story was about the Chinese courts classifying Bitcoin as property.
Cool. Yeah. So this one's a little interesting in my opinion. I think India was trying to do something similar, but it was based off their taxes. They you pay property tax on your Bitcoin or your cryptocurrency.
The way that India is doing everything right now is super weird because they can't even have the exchanges. So then they put the Bitcoin ATMs, and then the Bitcoin
Yes, it's
ATMs weren't
weird,
working.
right?
So the Bitcoin ATM owners were getting sued. It was such a thing. I wish that they would just like stop and just let it happen.
I think it was the Indian central bank that kind of just started the whole ban, and then it just downscaled from there, and then the whole thing with the Supreme Court, like, and it's just looking ugly. Like it's just not pleasant. It's
Uh oh. Uh oh.
I don't know. I feel like it's like kind of not impossible, but like hard to earn.
All right. Why don't you take this one?
Ah, so it looks like Chinese citizens and merchants are legally allowed to own and transfer cryptocurrency. Cool. So, I know earlier in the year there was a whole thing with China where they had pretty much put a ban over Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and ICOs in general.
Mm-hmm.
They had a blanket ban over it. They kind of revised that to
Why would you ban
where,
blankets? Blankets are the best.
anyways, they kind of revised that to where you were allowed to still have tokens. And India was doing something similar where they still allowed people to like have tokens, but you couldn't go on an ICO because they were dangerous and you couldn't sell them. Yeah, you can't exchange them, and you can't use rupees, whatever.
If
But
you got them, you can keep them, but you can't do anything.
right, right. But anyways, back to China. So, I mean, this is a step forward because China was super, 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 super strict on crypto, and most of the Bitcoin is predominantly owned in this region. So, this is kind of,
That's where all that hash power comes from.
yeah, that's all the hash
Bitmain.
power. But I mean, this is a huge step forward because now, if they're making it kind of like property owned, like, yeah, it sucks. Like, are they gonna do property tax on it? Are they like what are they gonna do with this? But like at least they're starting to like recognize this as an official thing, which is cool. Um, at the same time, like it's a currency. I guess you could put it as a digital asset to some extent, but it's a currency. And I feel I don't want to get lost in the sauce because look, literally, as you scroll down, property, not currency. Like I don't want people to get lost in the sauce of like having like, oh, this is like a car. Like it's like, oh, it has this value, but it's like a car. It's not. It's money. And my only fear with this,
Is gold money?
so it can be exchanged for money. It has a value. It's not like your currency is not going to have a value, but like my only fear is that probably with like if people continue or other countries, let's say, continue kind of this trend, are we going to treat Bitcoin more like gold rather than like something that we use like cash? Is it just going to be like something we have?
I think Bitcoin is going to be like gold.
You think, okay, well, what would be if I was to go to the store and I was to purchase something, and let's say we're in the crypto age and everybody's using crypto, like what am I paying? Because like let's say like Bitcoin's my gold, like we don't touch the gold. The gold stays at home. Like when am I immediately exchange it? Like is it Bitcoin Cash?
So in the future, the way that I see Bitcoin and with it being worth like it's going to be worth like so much money in the future, like the Bitcoin itself, the network is slow. It's really not meant to be a currency, honestly. Like it's really not, which is fine because there's been developments like the token within a token, that ERC20
Token within a token.
token that is backed by Bitcoin, right? So let's say Bitcoin is just the settlement layer,
Right.
The same way that banks settle transactions now, where I pay you and it goes through right away as far as like the payment, but the settlement actually happens later.
Mm-hmm.
So in the future, I feel like Bitcoin is going to just be the settlement layer, and
Okay.
then something else is going to be the intermediary, whether it's a fiat, whether it's this, that, whatever it is, something you take physical delivery of, whatever it is that's going to represent those, Bitcoin. It's probably actually not going to be a fiat in the sense of like an actual physical currency,
Okay.
because it would have to be something immutable as well,
Right.
that would actually be backed. So it's probably going to be another blockchain type thing that's just faster. Like maybe like Ripple could do something like that.
XRP is
like,
fast.
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it wouldn't be XRP because XRP is doing obviously its
XRP
own
is gonna
project.
be its a settlement layer in its own thing.
Right.
It's gonna be worth so much money so soon, so soon.
XRP.
That's not financial advice or anything like that, but wow, remember the 5th of November, which we're gonna get to, in a couple seconds here. But yeah, anyway, so this little quote here, basically, I'm sure you've read it by now, if you're watching along with us. So the court ruling was on a dispute that involved a business contract in relation to the possession and transfer of digital assets. The defendant in the case argued that the ban from People's Bank of China, PBOC, on crypto trading and ICOs, as well as a lack of venues to trade and transfer digital assets to the plaintiff rendered a contract between the defendant and the plaintiff invalid. So essentially, somebody was supposed to deliver some coins. They were unable to deliver some coins based on some things that were occurring, and they were trying to get that contract dismissed. So the court disagreed.
Right, because it's their stuff, but I mean, instead of putting it as a currency, since it's not a legal currency, they've made it as property.
So because of the various legal definitions for crypto under current Chinese laws and regulations
are unclear.
The arbitrator relied on existing contract law and general provisions of the civil law to determine the contract that is at dispute here. I don't know. Did I read that crazy? Am I tired right now?
Probably. But basically what it's saying is because there's no actual guidelines that tell you how to protect cryptocurrency like your Bitcoin, he took the other route, which was a general route of how to protect anything that's yours, like as property.
Here's what you were saying.
So this is your
earlier.
property?
That part is basically what you were saying earlier.
Kinda. That's what I'm a little afraid of, because you never. I don't want to say I'm afraid of it, because I feel like then something else would come of it. But then would it slow down the process of then using this currency in stores and having more stores accept it? Because I mean, there was, you had I think it was Expedia that used to accept it, and they like withdraw it, and a couple other places accepted and withdraw it, and Square's gonna start adding it to their devices. And that's cool, but if like people just go about this as Bitcoin being property rather than a currency, why would I accept why are you paying with property?
So for the same reason that you would have accepted a US dollar when the US dollar was actually backed by gold, right? So it would take a while, obviously, for the banks to physically move the gold around and physically settle the transactions. So in the intermediary, me and yous of the world would just use the banknotes that said this is worth this much gold or whatever, and it's redeemable for gold. And it would be something that would actually be redeemable for Bitcoin, whatever it was, like the Ethereum token that's pegged 1-to-1. It would just move faster, right? But the Bitcoin itself wouldn't, like, it would just stay. You know what I mean? So that way, when Bitcoin is like, it works, because like when Bitcoin is worth, so much money or whatever, and then you're literally just trading satoshis of it, instead of having a value that's like 0.0000 whatever, like kind of hard to communicate amongst people, they can literally say, okay, like that's 3 whatever the thing is that you're actually trading. I don't know what it'll be.
So does that mean we'll be using Bitcoin Cash?
Let's say dollars are eventually backed by Bitcoin, right? Let's say the United States government just buys up a ton of Bitcoin and then backs like dollars by it, but it's not a physical dollar, because that could be counterfeited. It's like an ERC-20 dollar or an ERC whatever dollar, right? And then we're trading that, and that's actually backed by Bitcoin. But instead of the decimals being like so small, it makes sense. So like $1 is still worth like what we would perceive $1 to be worth as. So the numbers are just easier for us to assimilate to. Bitcoin is still worth, like one Bitcoin is worth 250K or whatever. Sure. But then when you get down to those small decimal places, it's just, we break it down to whatever a dollar. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just makes it easier. Because Bitcoin is slow anyway to move around. Like, it's not really that fast to move around as like an actual fiat currency is. Like XRP is fast. You know what I'm saying? Like 10 seconds is there. But Bitcoin is
4 seconds.
Whatever. Bitcoin is still
Come on, XRP guy. How do you not know?
Bitcoin is still slow to this day. Like it's not.
It's slow. It takes about 2 hours.
It's
not
fast. It's not that slow. It's like 30 minutes though. Like it's not. That's not what fiat currencies are. Right?
I think it was like the original settlement time, or for it to get somewhere. I saw this on Ripple's website. It took like 2 hours or something like that to do something.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, to do something, and then Ethereum took some other amount of time, and then the goal is to pass it
I
out 4
know
seconds.
someone who the other day, her name was you. She purchased some Bitcoin from Coinbase and
So
sent
yes,
it to
it did
Binance.
not take that long.
How long did it take?
I know.
What was how long was it
I
about?
know, but
Maybe like
I could literally probably put this
20,
up on
30?
like Ripple's website because I've read this. It was on under X Rapid, and it was like talking
Yeah.
about the transaction times.
Yeah, I mean like 20, 30 seconds with the minutes.
Yes, I know.
Oh,
It's
okay.
fine.
No, I
Anyways,
was just curious about that. Just curious.
maybe it could take. I mean, it meant it could take up to because sometimes it gets stuck on the network, and then Coinbase sends out their parents and the children to save the parents.
I mean, if you're not, if you're trying to send a little bit of money and there's not a lot of miners that want to accept your transaction, I mean that's how that works. I don't send no little money.